this video I'm going to try to make a crown for this Elgin pocket watch, lever set pocket watch. And the crown busted off. You can see the stem there. And I need to make another one. So the first thing I did was I took measurements for the crown. You reach in here very carefully. And so what I've got is, these are the measurements for the crown. I get that without a reflection. And I've got the crown is about 2.8 millimeters at its smallest diameter, about 6.8 at its greatest diameter, and it's about 1.5 millimeters deep. And it requires me to tap 1.89 millimeters thickness, because that's the actual stem thickness there, or 0.074 inches. And so I looked up the tap, and the tap is a 1.8 tap. So I've got the right tap, and so we're going to try to tap that, and it's 0.35, I think, was the metric threads per inch. So the first thing I'm going to do is take this stock material here, and I'm going to, this is the first crown I've ever made, by the way, and we'll see what happens. But I'm going to take the stock material. I already faced it off here, and then I cut it with my Dremel tool on the other side, so it's got a decent cut on it, and I actually smoothen the edges there, so that when I put it in my 3-jaw chuck, I didn't have any issues with respect to it being centered. So the first thing I'm going to do is place this in the 3-jaw chuck, and I'm going to use this, put it right about there, and see if I can tighten that a bit. What I like to do is I put it in, tighten it a bit, and then move it a bit to see if there's any movement in there, and there isn't. So once I've tightened it a little bit, I can just grab this here and then tighten it a bit more. There we go. And so that the piece is now in the 3-jaw chuck, and I've got to tighten my belts a bit here. There we go. That belt is on, and then this belt has to go on here, and that's to make sure. This is my counter shaft, which gives me some pretty decent torque. And I've got to, just pardon me for all the hands in the way, but I like making these videos, but it does tend to get in the way of production. Plus I have to speak like a golfer. So today the Masters is on, and it should be really interesting. So there's the original crown is right there. So as you can see, and it is busted. That's the original crown. It's not looking so good. There we go. And it's kind of, the top came right off it, and I use this for some of the measurements as well. So what I'll do, I have to get my Dormeans gauge. That's the right way to pronounce that. It's really handy to do quick measurements. And here's the gauge here. This is the gauge here. This is a pretty old instrument, but I've got the size on this side, and I've got this part here. So I have to mill this down to 6.8. It's at 8 right now. So I mill that down to 6.8, but first thing I want to do is drill a hole right through the center. So I looked at what was needed to do that, and it turns out I do have the right pivot drill to drill the hole. So we'll just, this is the pivot drill I'm going to use to drill the hole. It's going to have a little hard time focusing, but there it is there. So that's the right size to drill the hole, and I've got to drill the hole fairly deep into the stock, because I'm thinking that in order to actually tap it, the taps don't start with the thread. They start kind of bald, and then a little bit after they start threading. So my plan is to tap it pretty deep, and then when I go to make the head of the crown, if it sticks out, I'll figure out how to put a plug on the end. So I actually just want to make this crown functional for now. It's not going to be the best looking crown in the world, but I'm going to try. So I've found the pivot drill I needed, as I said before, and I put the pivot drill into a hand vise. So these are pin vices or vices. And then I take the vise and I'm putting it into my tailstock, and it just happens to fit nicely in the end of the tailstock. And then I'm going to line that up with the center, but before I do this, I'm going to see if I can find center on this piece. I'm not sure whether I can do it this way or whether I do it with a graver. So maybe I'll just try this first and see what happens, and then go with the graver after. So I'm not, again, it's there's some first time try stuff going on here. So as I spin this, I'm not sure what this will do with the drill itself. Yeah, it's not finding center that way. It moved a bit. So I think I've got to find center first, and then make sure that this drill. So using a graver very carefully, I'm going to create a center hole here, and that way I'm not too concerned about where the drill starts. It's a bit tricky here, but I think I've done it. So now I have a center here. I'm going to take a little bit more material off. There we go. So that's basically that's center right there. So that's looking pretty good. And now I get this out of the way. That, and then I've got the tail piece here. Again, I know that some of the professional guys actually use just hand hold the thing so it's secure. I'm not sure whether this method is better or the hand holding method is better. It looks like I got some action there. I think I'm going to try to zoom in on this. There we go. And trick here is to take your time. And I haven't used any cutting oil. I'm not sure if I need to use cutting oil for this or not. But it seems like it's cutting fairly good. I'm just going to keep doing this and continue cutting the hole. So this is a super close-up of the cutting action here. And just apply a bit of pressure and then pull it back a bit. You have to regulate the speed of the lathe because it's the optimal speed for cutting this material. There, that's so far. Okay, here's a bit of a different camera angle of the cutting here. So again, I hold the pin vise with my hand, and I use the back of my palm to push the pin vise as I turn it, like so, and then it's cutting in, as you can see. I think I could declare success right now. So I'm going to finish the hole here. Hopefully it doesn't jam or anything like that. And we'll get back after the hole's done. So the trick here is to spin it, pull it in, push it in, and then pull it out again to get rid of the debris, like so. That's all you do. Okay, now for the tapping process. So I have my tap, and I'm going to manually turn this to tap it, and hopefully it does a good job. I'm using my tailstock to align it. So let's see what happens here. A couple turns forward and a couple of turns backwards. Here we go, it's starting to cut. There we go. Hopefully I think it's working. It's cutting through. This is pretty soft stuff too, so it doesn't require any cutting oils, or to make sure I don't go past where I want to be for the tap. So let me just back this off and have a look. If I go past where I want to be, then it's just going to strip it. So it actually looks pretty clean. There we go. I'm going to go and remove the camera angle so y'all can see it up close. Just back this off and grab the camera, and then I'm going to zoom in here a bit. So hopefully this zooms. And come on, zoom for me. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Sometimes you got to help it. Put a finger in there or something to get it to zoom appropriately. There we go. You can see the threads there. So it is tapped, and I'm just hoping it's the right tap for the crown. We'll see after. So that's tapped now, and that's that phase of the mission. You see all my guitars in the background there. Okay, now I've got to take this material down to 6.8, and it's currently, based on this gauge, currently at 8. So I've got to take it down 1.2. Is that right? 6.8, 1.2. Yeah, that's good. So I will commence removing material from this, and I've got to set my gravers up properly here so I'm not getting any rattle. And I got to make sure the rake angle's right and all that kind of stuff. So let me just try this out. I'm going to get in close here, so I got to watch my fingers on this because you can do some serious damage. I think I'm good here. Yeah, this is definitely removing material, so I have to take this down going to move this over just a bit, like so. And then I'm going to continue, because my hand should be on the other side here, so I need to lower this just a bit, because it's I'm having to go up a little bit too high here, and it's not comfortable. So I'm just going to lower that a bit. I'm using a Peerless lathe right now, so it's actually nice. All right, there we go. And I want this to be the right angle. So let's see if that's the right angle here. Am I able to remove material? Yeah, there we go. If you can see that, there's a lot of material coming off right now. And I'll work on this for a little while, try to take down 1.2 off the top of this. And when I finish that, then I'll have to figure out how to cut inward for the crown. I might not do it because I don't know if I can actually do that. It might be some crazy crown design that I come up with that doesn't require me to cut inward. So that's pretty good there. I'm trying to form a simple crown that doesn't wrap over the stem, and the purpose of that is to just to make sure that the crown works properly. I don't want to cut in and make a fancy crown here. I just want to make one that operates, and I'll try to make it as nice looking as possible. I got to cut right down into the very close to where the tap is. So getting very close to cutting close to the radius of what I want here. So I got to be very careful as I get close to the opening that where the stem goes in, so I don't remove too much material while I'm cutting this. So it's pretty tricky. So I'm going to just work away at this until I get it really close, and turn off the video, because to do this and videotape at the same time is suicidal. There, I think I'm finished with that. It looks like that would be a very good fit. As you can see, that will fit right in there, no problem. So I think the opening is just big enough as well. So that's good. And now I've got to figure out what to do with the rest of the crown. I've cut it and I've rounded it as well. So as you can see, it fits. It should fit, and it should also fit with the angle we have right here. So those two things are good. And so now I've got to figure out how deep to cut this. So I'm going to probably part it a bit ways up here. Let's see. And that's what we have so far. And I'm trying to round it off in the back and then cut it off. Alrighty then. So there's the crown. So I finished it off. I cut it, basically parted it on the lathe, and then I sanded down the top of the crown, kind of making like a little bit of a button crown. Then I fitted it on the watch. I think that where the stem goes in here, I think that could be narrowed a bit more, so I think that would snap in nicely. But it winds and it sets, and it actually doesn't look too bad. So that's the crown. So it's not a what you'd call a typical crown, because a typical vintage watch crown would be, you'd have some lines here knurling, and then it would go over the oh geez, I can't remember the name of this, but anyway, it would go over the pipe. That's it, the pipe. So the next crown I make will probably be able to fit over the pipe, but this is actually not a bad substitute. It looks kind of neat, actually. It's a pretty little crown, right? So So this is what I made. The original crown was in really hard condition. As you can see, it was not doing so well. There it is there. It was broken off. The top part was gone. Everything was gone on it. So you couldn't actually wind the watch or set or do anything with it. It was pretty shitty. So this one here is the replacement. I've asked some friends online if they've got any advice to knurl the crown to make it to give it a bit better grip. I used it to wind the watch and it actually works. So it wound no problem. It's pretty stable, right? It's pretty steady. I've wound the watch all the way up, so I can't show you. But it is it's a lever set watch, so I'll just quickly open it here and show you, just to prove that it works. So, because you can't make a video and make a part and then everyone goes, yeah, great video, but did it actually work? So there's the lever. So I'll pull that out with my thumbnail, hopefully. And you get bigger thumbnails. And there's the crown. So as I turn that, no issue at all. The lever sets perfectly. So, or the dial, the hand set perfectly. So it's around 6 o'clock, 6:06. I'll just spin it around here. 6:06. Here we go. It's in place, and you just have to push this down, and then it's set. So that's the crown. Thanks for watching. It wasn't that difficult to make. The hardest part was actually as you're cutting into it. I just pull it out a bit. As you're cutting here, when you're reducing the diameter. Now, as I showed before, I tapped the crown, and as I was reducing the diameter towards the hole that I tapped, I was very concerned about the amount of material left over. So you really have to watch carefully as you reduce the material on this part, because if you go too far, you'll go into the hole and then you'll ruin the crown. If you don't go far enough, then the crown won't fit inside the tube here properly, right? And there's another part of this movement inside of this tube. So this isn't one of these crowns that pulls out by unscrewing a screw and then you pull the crown out. This crown actually stays with the case. So you got to be very careful anyway as you remove material at that point in time. I do think I got a little tiny bit more material that I could remove, and I might sit in a little further, but for now that's good, and I'll wait till someone gives me some advice on maybe how to roughen the surface nicely. I just like the look of the crown the way it is, so I'd hate to ruin that, so it's kind of cool. Anyway, that's the crown. Thanks for watching this video. This is the first one I've ever made, so you get to see all the mistakes, if there's any, and all the trials and tribulations. And one thing is fun. It's fun using a watchmaker's lathe. And again, keep your hands away from this part. There's the cutoff. There's the part I cut off. But keep your fingers away from this while you're graving, because it'll do some pretty good damage on your fingers. I'm a guitar player, so I don't want to ruin my fingers. So I'm very aware as I work closely with that part, and as I cut that away as well. So if I didn't have a proper cutaway tool, I used one of the gravers and just kept working at it until I cut it away. And then after the fact, I faced this part off. That way I have a little bit of faced off material if I decide to reuse this. So that's it. I'm not sure if this is even on. Yeah, it is, but it's not. This belt's not attached. Anyway, thanks for watching. Good enough. Thanks. Bye.